the drop, you can't ignore it. I'm transforming now these cars and planes, I'm always boarding. Just out touring down in Charlotte like I play for Hornets. When I'm performing, never boring, now you can't afford it. Champagne Perrier, finish friend.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Wait, can y'all hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Perfectly.
Welcome back to the King and I Life podcast, hosted by myself, Soul Touch of the Poet, and my brother.
Son Soul X.
And ladies and gentlemen, we have the lovely, the fabulous Shena L joining us again.
Hello,
Yes, indeed. Yes,
hello,
indeed. Thanks for coming back on
hello.
with us.
For
Yes,
sure, for
indeed.
sure. What's that?
Nothing much, but you are it is expected for you to be you, as I told you.
Good.
Because the audience love the way you break things down. Um
Absolutely.
but thank y'all for joining us. Thank y'all for joining us. And remember, we're going to live every second and fourth Wednesday of the month. Son Solex, what you got for the peoples?
Of course, you guys can reach out to us at KINGANDEYE369 at gmail.com. Again, that's King NI 369 at gmail.com. Again, if you have any comments, if you have topics you want to hear us discuss, or if you want to come onto the platform and discuss those topics with us, you are more than welcome. So please just reach out to us and let's get it cracking.
Yes, and always hit that www.kingandilife.com. That's the link to our website. We can find all our previous podcast episodes and all type of information. The guest registration forms on there as well. So with that being said, um, we have a good topic for y'all tonight. Um, Sexual irresponsibility in the Black community.
Yes,
Um,
indeedy.
we build up our communities over time and enlarging our families. Both men and women play a vital role within our culture and have certain roles to fulfill. Unfortunately, not everyone understands the responsibility that comes along with making a family. Some see sex as a sport, entertainment, a drug, or just something to fill the time. Many within our communities use sex as a weapon and not are not concerned with the outcome of their bad decisions. What do you two have as y'all into this conversation?
I'm gonna let you have that one, Miss V, because you are our guest.
Okay. Well, like you said, a lot of people see it as a sport, entertainment, or just something to do. And that couldn't be furthest from the smartest thing to do when we're talking about sexual irresponsibility in our community. Because number one, we got too many bastardized children as it is already.
Agreed.
And I think if we pay attention to what's most important, and if we can handle these situations before going into them, we'll be better off as far as that goes.
Okay. So let's.
Um, I agree with that. Definitely, it's about educating, our youth. For so many years now, we've kind of let things, just blow in the wind. And of course, things aren't changing for us or our communities by doing that. And, we know that we can't hold our kids' hands every minute or every, day. But the thing about it is we have to teach our kids what's acceptable and what's not acceptable. And if they find themselves in a situation, where they do, have a undecided or undetermined situation like that where they didn't foresee it coming, what do you do at that point? And that has to start with a conversation, I feel.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I agree with both of y'all. And I can say for me, looking over the last 30, 40 years or whatever, I'll just say from middle school on up to now, this irresponsibility has gotten so far out of hand that it's mind blowing. And, you know, yes, I know that a lot of us may have been irresponsible in our youth in younger ages and some up to now, but it seems like the more that is at stake, has been at stake coming up to now, it's like there is so much of a not caring mood, a daredevilish attitude, um, and it's just crazy. And I think the sadder part for me when it comes to this, and we'll get into this during the conversation, is that it's so glamorized on TV and movies, music, social media, and
Hmm.
it's almost like preaching to the choir or preaching to an empty room when it comes to this.
Right. Absolutely. I agree. And I say that I agree with you saying that because a lot of times we don't have control over our own minds. We are
Mhm.
easily manipulated. We are easily led astray, um, and we don't stop to look at ourselves when we think about sex in a whole. It's
Right.
been here since the beginning of time,
Right.
and otherwise it wouldn't be any people.
Hmm.
So, but when we talk about the irresponsibility of it, there then you have to stop and think about, okay, what am I doing? I Most people, let me say this first. Most people when they are raised, right?
Hmm.
Everybody is taught about sex by their
Right.
parents or whoever raised them. Even in school, I don't know if they do now, but back then, when I was coming up, you had sex education and you learn the basics of it.
Hmm.
But what they don't teach is the mental and
Yes.
emotional aspect that comes along with having
Yeah.
sex. So the right from wrong, not to have, unprotected sex. You know how to pick a proper partner or whatever, but it doesn't always work out that way. So when we go out here and we're having sex just all willy nilly, and we're not thinking about everything that comes behind it, that is
Right.
where the irresponsibility comes in.
Mhm.
You can have sex all day. If you grown, do you?
Right.
But if you are not in a position to handle the aftermath, then
Mm.
what are you doing it for?
That's the important part of that. If you're not mentally, physically, emotionally, and financially prepared to deal with what comes with after that, you need to sit down somewhere.
Yeah, yes, please do.
Yeah.
Because we got too many children out here who are fatherless and motherless. Now
Hmm.
sometimes nowadays the mothers is just as bad as the fathers. Some of them
Yeah.
child support and all
True.
type of shit. It's like
So
damn,
true.
and it's like, okay, we get it's sex. I mean, it ain't going nowhere. It ain't going out of style. And people act like they just gonna go crazy if it's not happening, but you're not thinking about everything, like we said, that comes along with that.
Hmm.
So
Yeah. Yeah. So if you got anything else before we jump into it?
Yeah, just the thing about it is, like you were saying, when we were coming up through school, we did have sex education. Um, but during that sex education, they did not teach us, what do you do when you're in that situation about, you're about to commit the act, as they say, about protecting yourself. And anybody can say, hey, throw a condom on, or, make sure you're on your birth control pills. But the conversation through transition, meaning when you do lay down with that, female or that male, and y'all come up with this situation, what happens from that point on? That was a conversation that I felt, was left out of our sex education when I was
mhm,
back in school.
Mm.
mhm.
So, so then once you're at that point, um, I remember, them giving us eggs to carry around and say, take
Right,
care of this egg. If this egg
right,
cracks,
right.
you get an F. You know what I'm saying? And you more concerned about getting the dang F than the actual subject of what it is you are actually taking care of at that
Exactly.
time.
Yeah, yeah, I
But
agree.
yeah, it definitely comes down to being, us teaching our kids the proper education as far as like actually protecting themselves and what comes
Mhm.
along with being irresponsible.
Oh
Right.
yeah, absolutely.
Shout out to Red Lipstick Vibes. Check her podcast out. look, they go in, they go in on it.
Oh
Yes, yes,
shit.
they do. Yes, they
Definitely
do.
check
My
out.
type of thing.
Look, look,
Is it called red lipstick vibes?
look. Yes. Definitely go check her podcast out. The way they format is not to get too far off the topic, but um, yeah, I was fortunate enough to join a podcast the other day, and I said we was going to do this topic because this came up in the last podcast that they did. But definitely go check them out. Check her out, and all those that are on her podcast. They have great shows. But getting back into it, let's define sexual irresponsibility. Who wants to jump on that first?
I'll give that to Sun Soul.
All right. Um, of course, this isn't in stone. This is just my personal take on it. Um, I think sexual irresponsibility is when someone is deliberately passing out seeds, as they say. You know, you get a seed, you get a seed, you get a seed, you get a seed,
Right.
and they're not worried about the repercussions that come with that. You know,
Mhm.
about okay, you made this child with this woman. You know that you're not going to be in this woman's life. You know you're not going to be responsible enough to raise this child or help her with that child. Um, Things along that line
Mhm.
is just my take on being irresponsible, and not to take the responsibility off of the females, but again it comes down to at that particular time you have a choice. You
Mhm.
know, it only takes a minute to say, hey, hold up, we finna go in, but let's do what's necessary to protect ourselves.
Right.
Hmm,
Right.
okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I couldn't agree. Whew, I couldn't agree with that more. Both
Um,
female and male, it takes two, and it's a responsibility on both, not just one. That's for
Yeah,
sure.
right.
definitely, definitely. Sheena, you want to take it? You want to let me have it?
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I'm gonna say sexual irresponsibility to me is when people, individuals, regardless of what their age, but more targeted towards younger, is when, as we mentioned, when you're not mentally, physically, emotionally, and financially able to deal with the act of it from beginning to end. um, Feeling like you have to do this to impress someone, feeling like you have to do it to prove that you're an adult. Um, when you're doing it and you produce a child from that, and that child has to suffer because you felt like this is something that you had to do, even though that you're not ready to do. And when you put yourself and others at risk for the negative effects that come with it. And I'll just keep it brief at that.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with both of you guys actually. And when we're talking about sexual irresponsibility, right? The first thing that comes to most people mind is, like we said in the beginning, wrap it up, practice safe
Mhm.
sex, that type of thing. But for me, what I know the safest route to take is to be, like we said, to be mature enough to say, am I prepared? Am I mature enough to go into this situation? And am I ready to take care of whatever comes out of it, whatever that may be? So many, even we can go into just being raised in a certain type of family or environment, and you can be raised all types of right, but you are going to ultimately make that decision for yourself when you get out in the
Yep.
world, and and you in front of that person, and your pheromones, and you hot and you ready to get it going
Mhm.
on or whatever. You're not thinking about all the things most people are taught from a young age. Protect yourself. You don't just give it to anybody. Don't just do this, just do that. And so we get into these situations, and then we go in and we have sex, and that's the most irresponsible thing that you can do, is not using your brain in that type of situation, because sex is, it's cool, but it's
Mhm.
more than just a physical act.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And um, And the crazy thing about it is, I don't know if it was lack of education or ignorance or whatever. I'll speak from my perspective of who was the adults in the room for me, but the most sex education that I got was you better not bring no babies home. That was the biggest sex
Yep.
education that I got growing up. And then in other places, the thing was, oh, you better wear a condom. You better wear a condom. You better wear a condom. Oh, you better use birth control. And it's like that to me is a very, very, very small part of that conversation. Yes, it's important, but it's very small. And that to me leads to people making irresponsible decisions
Mhm.
as teenagers and young adults. Because if you say, hey, make sure you wear a condom and so you won't get no disease and don't get nobody pregnant, what else is there? Because the only thing I'm thinking is, oh, I got to get me a condom so I don't catch disease. But back then it wasn't really taught that, hey, condoms don't protect you from everything.
Mhm.
Uh,
No, they sure
Condoms are
don't.
not 100% when it comes to getting somebody pregnant. So that to me also lends to that irresponsibility, because if you're only telling someone use protection, don't get them pregnant, you're not even preparing them for the mental, emotional, and financial aspect of that conversation.
Mhm. Hmm. And we're gonna go past just even getting pregnant. Just how this shit can fuck you up emotionally. I'm sorry if I don't supposed to cuss on your show, but I'm just
Hey,
saying,
No, do
speak
your
your
like,
truth.
thing.
you
Let
Speak.
it
know,
fly.
it messes you up emotionally and mentally in a way that surpasses anyone's understanding. So when parents teach, when we as parents or when parents taught us, when you teaching children about sex, about going out there and giving your most sacred parts to someone, you have to teach the mental and emotional part of it, because you may like this boy, or this boy may like this girl, but it may not turn out the way you think it's going to turn out.
Mhm,
So why are we not teaching our children that part of it?
mhm,
How to deal with that, how to look for these type of signs and that type of signs. Like you said just a minute ago, you're only taught wrap it up, get on your pill, don't do this and don't do that. But that's just like a child, a cat, a dog, anybody for that matter. When you keep telling someone don't, in the back of their mind, they want to go figure out what the don't is about. But if
right.
you
Yeah.
prepare them emotionally and physically, and you put a little fear in there, like, look, it's cool, you can have sex, you may get pregnant, but look, this is what can happen behind that.
Mhm,
Maybe 10, 15, 20 years out of your life, you may not be able to think straight again or have a healthy relationship again because this situation messed you up. So we have to start laying the keys of preparation down more so than just giving don'ts, in my opinion.
mhm.
I
Yeah.
totally agree with that. Like I said, we hadn't discussed part of this, on previous podcasts, but um, I was telling Soul Toucher, my first experience of having an adult conversation with my dad was I was about 12 years old. I asked him, when are you going to teach me about the birds and the bees? And I said it in front of his friends. So, of course, they all got good chuckles and laughs and hoo ha's out of it. But that's one conversation me and him we never had. Not from then and certainly not to now. And I guess his reasoning was you'll figure it out, son,
Mhm,
which is so true. But at the same time, it's kind of like it was a disservice to me because, as my father, that conversation it should have been had between me and you. And
mhm,
again, not taking shots at my father or being, holding a grudge about it or anything, but as a young man, I could have appreciated it back then.
Hmm.
Um, thank God I was just smart enough not to, allow myself to be caught up in a situation like that where I got someone, pregnant, was not prepared for that situation.
Hmm.
But I definitely think that we as parents, that's a conversation we definitely have to have with our kids because we teach them so many things throughout the course of their life. We teach them how to cook, how to clean, how to make up their beds. We teach them what's an acceptable behavior and what's not an acceptable behavior.
Right.
Um,
Right.
to our understanding, we try to teach them what love is.
Mm-hmm.
But again, at the end of the day, we teach them discipline too. But you got to go more in depth. And by
Mm-hmm.
going in depth, you have to sit your kids down and have that adult conversation with them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, kids know more than you think they do.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
They definitely do.
And sometimes we go to them and talk about stuff, and they're like, I know that already.
Mhm.
And then they be like, actually, it's called this or that.
Mhm.
They know that plus some. So I think that if we can put a healthy barrier in place to where kids are comfortable enough to talk to us about these type of things, that'll help a lot out with the irresponsibility.
Yep.
Yeah, definitely. Son Select, you was talking about how we're taught this, we're taught that, we're taught this and that. Um, I know for me growing up, I was taught more how to make a bed, wash dishes, mop a floor, clean walls, cut grass. I was taught those more than I was taught anything about sex. Um, and looking back on it, I'm like, those life skills were important, but when I look at all the other things that could have been taught, those other things are kind of like irrelevant to me. Um, and then when we talk about sex education in school, that was the most bare bones teaching
Yes.
that I got about sex in my entire life. I mean, it's cool for you to tell me the parts of a woman, the parts of a man's reproductive system. It's
Mm-hmm.
cool to tell me how a woman gets pregnant and ovulation and this, that, and other, but they didn't even go deep into ovulation and all of that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you know, all of that is cool.
Right.
But if you're not really telling me the mental and emotional aspects of that, it's all right, it's a boring class.
Mm-hmm.
Um, one of the craziest things though is that our health teacher was fine as hell. So it was like, and her name was Miss Heller. I remember her name. But we more so went to health class to look at her than to get whatever she was teaching. And even though what she was teaching was just real bare bones, just like you said, carry an egg around. If you break the egg, you fail. Or
Yeah.
carry a baby doll around. And it's like,
Mm-hmm.
my sister's been playing with baby dolls all their lives, and it's like, as a little kid, like I played with them too. But that
Right.
doesn't teach me anything about sex before, during, and after, mentally, physically, emotionally, and all these other things. Yes, we can talk about STDs and realistic vibes. I'm curious about those two that you said that are killing people in a year. Um, but um, it's great information to tell somebody about STDs and stuff, but you need to teach about the mental and emotional aspects of that, because if you do not, you have damaged people growing up. And sometimes, in my opinion, that causes people to be irresponsible about sex later on in life, make irresponsible decisions, and think that they have to use their body to please someone, and think that they have to use their body in order to get attention and love and stuff like that. So when we're defining sexual irresponsibility, all of that has to be taken into consideration.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I agree.
So, does the lack of family/personal values factor in the equation?
Um, in my opinion, no. I think it's more so a lack of knowing a person's self.
Right.
And I say that because like I said earlier, you can be raised in a straight line. You can be given all the tools. I know people who have been raised in fantastic families and still have this monster, this demon that they have to deal with. But I think that when we talk about family values, you can be raised in a loving family and carry those things on as a teenager until you get older and decide to have your own family or whatever. But like I said, when we go back to those don'ts, sometimes in a wholesome family, you hear a lot of don'ts and not really the real. So when you go out into the world, you want to find out the other side of that. What was not taught to me, you know. So I think that from a singular point of view, a lot of us look at it that way. And
Hmm.
while we are human and we look at it like, well, I was taught this way and that way, but I want to figure it out, I want to figure out what's going on. Yeah, my family loves me and I love my family. You got people today who will swear up and down, that they love their wife or their husband, but they still have something inside of them that they want to explore or
Hmm.
figure out, so to speak. So I would say I wouldn't necessarily say it's the lack of family values, but more so a lack of understanding in yourself, what it is that you want to do with this. I mean, if that's making any sense, like,
Hmm.
you want to go and have sex, you had these great family values, you had bad family values. Now, yes, bad family values play a big part as well, because you got men out here who were raised in households where the father wasn't any good to the mom wasn't any good to the father, and so that starts a domino effect of things and generational things. But
Right.
when we start talking about good families, right? And then we wonder, and you always hear people be like, man, that boy was raised right or that girl was raised right.
Hmm.
What's wrong with them? Why they? But, it's those don'ts. I think we need to be a little bit more open in families. I don't necessarily think it's the family values, you guys. I think it's just more so of having a total conversation about just the freedom of exploring sexuality.
Mm. Okay. So unless you want to jump in there?
Um, I'll just add this. When it comes down to family values, I'm totally with you on that. Um, you whether you come from a good family or bad family, at some point it does come down strictly on you and
Mm-hmm.
where you're at,
Mm-hmm.
and the lack of self knowledge at that age is pretty much expected.
Right.
Some of us, are smart enough to catch it, and then some of us obviously aren't.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I just, no shot at anyone. But
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
the thing about it is, when you come from a good family, as they say, when you have that guidance and someone trying to help teach you along the way, yes, it does make it easier. It's kind of like somebody there with a flag in their hand saying go this way or go that way.
Mm-hmm.
um, when you have the lack of thereof, it again falls back on you. You have to um, figure it out for yourself, as they say.
Mm-hmm.
But the point that I'm trying to get at here is, again, we got so many different things affecting young people when it comes down to sexuality. Um,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of things that are happening in our society nowadays, I'll be honest with you, I don't agree with.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
but I can't say that from a first-hand standpoint what the sex education is like nowadays in school. I will hope it's more advanced than what it was like for us coming up.
It's not.
I don't even know if they still have it.
But again, the thing about it is, when you're that young, you're still trying to figure out life. Like, you're going through school. Yes, you have friends and things, along that line. But you are still trying to figure out, okay, so I'm here living life. What is my purpose? And a
Mm-hmm.
lot of young people asking themselves that question.
Mm-hmm.
So again, it just goes back down to self-awareness, and when they find themselves in these type of situations, they're lost.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
I will say that kids these days are trying to figure out too damn much and they need to chill out. First, that's the first thing I'll say. I don't disagree with y'all when it comes to family values and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but what I will say is, I mean, I get like if you come from a good family, you still have the same problems as someone who didn't. I'll say from my experience, and I've said this many times, I was molested as a child,
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't have these conversations before, during, and after. Um, the one time that I spoke up as a child saying that someone touched me, you know, I was in a room full of high ass adults on whatever they was high on, and I got laughed at.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say for me, growing up in that type of environment, that led to my sexual irresponsibility when I got to the point of when I started having sex.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so for me, family values do play a role if that is not a conversation that's being had in that family.
Right.
Um, it to me, it's a little unfair to put this type of this weight on a child's shoulders coming up in the world, especially today, if this family is not teaching this in the house at a young age. Um, and it's more critical today.
Mm-hmm.
Now, as we get older, as we mature, as we observe things in life,
Mm-hmm.
it does boil down to personal values, and then it can also incorporate family values because what I experienced back then, lack of teaching and all the things that I've been through, I would want to be and have been in that position to say, hey, you shouldn't do X, Y, and Z because this could lead to this could lead to that, blah, 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 blah. That
Right.
and that kind of lends to what y'all were saying about it doesn't matter good or bad family background or whatever, because today half these kids don't want to hear what you're saying. You
Mm-hmm.
know, I had a conversation with a child who felt it was okay for her to run away in downtown Baltimore, and I'm like, you can't be doing that. This can happen to you, this can happen to you, and this can happen to you. And it's like it went in one ear and out the other.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, I agree. It doesn't matter. But at the
Mm-hmm.
same time, it has to count for something. And I know y'all not discounting that, but
No, no.
Right.
I feel more strongly that it has to count for something when it comes to family values because hopefully somewhere in that conversation it has to stick with these kids. It has to, even if they hold on to a little bit of it. But hey, it's just hard to it's hard to crack a rock with a pencil.
Right.
It is.
It
Definitely
is.
is.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. I think that the kids nowadays, especially if we talking about these, I don't know what you guys consider kids, say 25 and under,
Hmm.
you know, they are figuring out their way, they're figuring out life. And see, when we were growing up, when I was growing up, I didn't have the technology that's available
Right.
now. So many children nowadays are being raised by the internet and TV and whatever else is going on. And there's so much pressure in school. It was pressure back when I was in school,
Right.
oh yeah, it was pressure. But, we, as you said, we did have those, family values or teachings that kind of stuck with us. And then we had to, that was the point where we sat and say, okay, well, I got to make a decision. And am I going to listen to this or am I going to do this?
Hmm.
Right.
So it's kind of that self thing,
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
You talk about technology. Here's another thing that is kind of abstract but can factor into it. With technology, you have pretty much all the more decent and logical answers at your fingertips if you choose to look for them.
Right.
When we were coming up, If you wanted to learn something about sex, you had to ask someone.
Right.
You had to go to a library and check out a book. And for some kids, if they're shy or reserved or whatever the case may be, they probably would not go look for those resources because they would be embarrassed because of, oh, you got that book, oh, you stupid, oh, you this, oh, you that, blah blah blah. But today it's like they have the information right there, they could look it up, but instead of looking up stuff responsibly, and they have the means and the intellect to do it, they're looking up all of this stuff
Hmm.
that's in the media that's irresponsible, and they think it's cool and all this, that, and the other. And that goes back to dealing with the definition of irresponsibility. And
Hmm.
then it goes to personal values as well, because it's like you have the means to be aware, but you're choosing not to, and you're letting society dictate your irresponsibility. And it's to me, it's crazy.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the thing about it is kids are always, well, I can't say always, but for the majority of part, they're curious. Like me and one of my closest friends at the time that, I was in that age bracket, we, our firsthand experience of, being intimate with a woman was porn.
Hmm.
We snuck and stole his dad's porn videotapes and we watched it like, okay, so that's what you do. This was a very bad example of what intimacy is, but again, we were curious. So I just think that kids nowadays, they're, again, like you said, they have the internet, they have all these resources at their fingertips. So again, it comes back down to having a better understanding of exactly what it is you're looking for.
Hmm.
And again, these kids nowadays, they are way more advanced than what we used to be. Way more advanced.
Hmm.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. But if you think about it, look at what you just said. You said that you wanted to look at the porn. Now your parents probably at this point have taught you, the basics of sex, right? So when we're talking about this, about sex, what made you want to look at it anyway? Let's look at that. It made you
Mm.
want to look at it, even though you knew you wasn't supposed to, right? You knew
Right.
you
Yeah.
wasn't supposed to, but you
Definitely.
wanted to look at it anyway, right? So
Yeah.
that's what we're talking about, that people are so eager and concerned and so I don't even remember the right word right now, but they want to find out so bad, what this is like, because sex is human nature.
Hmm.
It's
It
human
is.
nature, you know, but it's the irresponsibility and the responsibility part that we're having a problem with. But I don't think there, to be honest with you guys, I don't think that there is anything that we can do as a people to reconstruct that ideology of safe sex, because it is so bad nowadays that
Yeah.
there's nothing, whether we took it off of TV, whether we took it off the radio, the cat's out the bag now.
Yeah.
Everybody is buck wild. So it's really not much we can do. And matter of fact, it's probably always been this way. It's just more televised now. It's more
Yes. Yes.
easily accessible.
Yes.
So now and that goes back to my, my original point, is it's a personal choice, and knowing yourself and what you choose to do with this very huge thing. Sex is a very huge responsibility.
Mm.
It is.
Yeah. And that leads us into our next question. Is it realistic to hold parents accountable?
Um, It depends. Like I say, if you've been in a house where you deal with molestation, I grew up in a family who comes from a lot of that. Thankfully, I've never had to deal with that, but my mom and other people in my family have had to deal with that. And so, yeah, it can most definitely be a situation where that pain and that trauma sticks with you.
Hmm.
If you're molested in the home, or even if you're young, even if it's not your parents that done it to you, um, certain things can traumatize a person to where they don't really make the right decisions when it comes to sex. But I can't say we can totally blame the parents. If the parents are doing their part and teaching more than just the basics and having conversations about the physical and emotional and everything else that comes along with it, then no, we can't blame them. But if they're not, I believe, yes, we can blame them, because you can't just tell a child don't have sex, protect yourself, and not explain the why to
Right.
the situation. So
Mm. Yeah.
Definitely. You want to go?
Go ahead.
Um, I totally agree with everything you're saying. I think that when it comes down to being a parent and having that conversation with your child, again, it goes back to we teach our kids so many different things. But when it comes down to actual love per se, and what we feel real love is, that's something we kind of leave it up there, or out there. You'll figure it out. And I think that's kind of like the wrong thing to do. Yes, we can teach our kids, about respect and how to respect other people. But as much as you teach them discipline, you have to teach them about respect and love as well.
mhm,
So, me coming up, and I really wasn't in an environment where, my parents told me, I love you all the time. It was like, here and there. So when I would hear that, it was usually after a moment where I did something that they found to be, acceptable or impressed them and their friends.
mhm,
But again, I just think that that has to be just as much of the conversation as actual sex.
mhm,
Meaning, when you're raising your child, you have to teach them what love is and what's
mhm,
acceptable. And again, as a father, I take it more on the man's side than the female side. And again, not neglecting the female side of it,
mhm,
but being a responsible father, um, I think is kind of a duty that we owe our kids to help them, in certain aspects of life when it comes down to being, intimate with another person.
mhm,
That's just my take on it.
Yeah. I totally agree with y'all, and I would add, I would agree that if they're not having this conversation, yes, they should be held accountable. But if they are having this conversation, then hey, there's only so much you can do. But at the
Right.
same time, you know, I think one of the biggest things is not only should you have this conversation as a parent, but you should create a safe space for that child to be inquisitive and
mhm,
not reluctant to ask those questions, whatever may come up. Um, because you can have these conversations all day,
mhm,
but
True.
if you're not creating a safe space for that child to, hey mom, hey dad, what up, blah blah blah, whatever the question may be, if you're not creating that safe environment,
mhm,
you can teach them whatever and
mhm,
and feel confident that you did a great job in having that conversation. But
Right.
again, if that safe space is not there, then they're not going there, they may not be able or feel comfortable asking further on questions. The other thing I'll throw in there is some parents allow society to dictate when they should have this conversation with their children, and I think it's sad, and I think that happens more so in our communities. I could be wrong, but I think that happens more so in our communities because of how we came up and because what is thrown out in the news, and we get so criticized so much of how we raise our children. But we have to understand that we know our children, we know what they're exposed to,
mhm,
and
mhm,
at home or when we're, there,
mhm,
we know what they're potentially being exposed to out in the streets, especially today. So it's like when you allow your child to have access to social media, I think it's the time to have those conversations. And I think that needs to be, you know, something that's in the forefront of all parents' minds, because once you let a child go on social media, all bets are almost off. If that child
Right.
does not possess those values, whether you taught them that child that, or this child says, you know what, I'm not doing that. So this conversation needs to be had very early. But again, you know when the right time is to have this conversation with your child.
Right.
Yep.
I agree.
Yes, realistic vibes. Too much freedom out there. Too much freedom. The freedom that they have today is I would say the freedom they have today compared to us is like they're free slaves, because they got it.
Yeah. But I totally, align with what you guys were saying about, even if you teach your child to the best of your ability, you know, what they shouldn't be doing,
Mhm.
and what comes behind, if they proceed to go past what you're telling them not to go, it's on them at that point.
Right. It
So
is.
it's,
It is. Yeah.
totally on that child at that point, because again,
Yeah.
you can't hold their hand 24/7,
You
every day
cannot. No.
throughout the day. It's
I
just not
mean,
going to happen.
how can you get mad at me or any parent for that matter because of the decision they made? When you gave them the tools. So even
Right.
you can. There is no rule book, there is no guide or anything to parenting. But if you give them the tools, you have lived your life. You've been in sexual experiences. You've been in bad sexual experience. You have lived and you learn and you tell them. But life is the best teacher. You can't really protect them from everything,
Right.
so we just have to do our best to, like you guys said, keep that safe space open for them to come and talk to us about anything. And that's how I rock it in my house. You can talk to me about whatever. I don't care what it is, if it's oral sex, if it's fetishes, if it's whatever. You can talk to me about it. You can talk about whatever, because who am I to tell you that I don't want to talk about that? You shouldn't talk about that, because now
Hmm.
I have put that barrier in place. Like,
Yeah.
okay,
Right.
now they're going to want to figure out why mama, why daddy want me away from this so bad.
Hmm.
So they're gonna get eager and want to figure out even more. We could take social media away. We can keep them off their phones. We can make them study 24/7. We can shelter them or try to protect them as much as we want. But I think it does more damage than good versus letting them just be themselves and figuring it out. Because I mean, there's not much you can do once they go out there in the world and have their first initial taste of that. It ain't got nothing to do with us no more. They
No.
gonna do what they gonna do. So we can't really. It's not much we can do but give the love and the basics and the support and say, hey, you know what? Okay, you may be 14 or 15 right now. You may be 16 or 17, but eventually you're going to be an adult. And if I tell you now or tell you at 25, what difference does it make? I can hold the phone away from you, but when you get to the schoolhouse, your friend is going to show you anyway.
Yeah.
So, it's kind of like, where do you go from there? Because you can hide it from them or try to protect it from them. But when they get out there in the world, it's going to rear its head anyway.
Yeah. One
Yeah.
thing you can't do is protect someone from themselves.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
That right there.
Yeah. And the other thing that I would throw out there is it's imperative to just have these conversations off the rip, because like every species on this planet, we are genetically wired to have sex, to reproduce.
Mhm.
And you cannot get around that. It's like no matter what you do, no matter what you shelter a child from, or an individual, we're genetically wired for this.
Mhm.
And the reason why I say that is I have two cats, and it's like, I got them at what, 8 weeks. They didn't see anything about sex,
Mhm.
but in the last 6 months, the male cat hunching on the female cat, and I'm sitting there looking like that's nature. But then when
Mhm.
I apply that observation to humans, and it's like we're genetically wired to do this. It's like we don't necessarily need to be taught to do it or how to do it, but we need to be shown these days in current times how and why to
Mhm.
do it responsibly.
Right.
Right.
Right. Like
That's it.
drinking.
Yeah,
Like drinking. You go, I mean, hey, you're going to have a drink, but do it responsibly. I
yeah.
agree. Yeah.
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 So, is culture or society as a whole to blame?
Culture or society? Um,
It's gonna be a funny one. This is gonna be a funny one.
uh, yeah, I guess so because I mean, like I said earlier, sex has been around since the beginning of time, right?
Right.
Otherwise, it wouldn't be people. So, when we think about culturally, I think a lot of our culture, to be honest, our culture has learned a lot from other cultures.
Hmm.
And
Yes.
I think that a lot as Americans, we are under the European way of doing things.
Hmm.
And if you go to Europe right now, shit, it's nothing. What we do over here and what you see on social media and TV,
Light
I
work.
mean, that's light
Yes.
compared to what they
Light
got
work.
going on. Like I love reggae. I go to all these different concerts in the summertime, and the way they get down and these Africans, everybody we in America, I think, are just too fucking judgmental. Like,
Mm.
I think that we just learn to let what is be. I mean,
Hmm.
like you just talked about your cats. They never knew anything about sex. Nobody had to teach them that. It's a natural way of life. It's just it comes down to a matter of, like I said, if do I know what I'm doing? Am I prepared to have this interaction? And am I prepared to deal with what comes with after the fact? Yes, social media and culture, there's a lot of pressure having sex. Everybody want to be what they see on TV and online, but at the
Right.
same time, once you take all of that away, you still have yourself to look at in the mirror, and you
Mm.
have to be able to live with yourself when you out here just all willy-nilly having sex and doing whatever, because sex is not just a physical interaction. Like I said, it's a mental, it's emotional, it's a spiritual interaction, it's a transference of energy. You
Mhm.
ever had sex at some point in your life, right? And you just couldn't get right after that point, like you just fell off,
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying? Just
Mhm.
something with the person ain't right, because it's
Hmm.
a transference of energy. This person could have had sex with 100 motherfuckers before they got to you. You know what I'm saying? So you got all these spirits, you know what I'm saying, on you from this interaction. So it's not necessarily a responsibility in a physical form. I look at it as in a spiritual way, because you don't know what this person out here doing that you just had sex with. This person could be
Mhm.
a rapist, a sodomist, or whatever, could have some sick shit going on in their head. And so when you go out there and you give this person a part of you, not knowing that this can affect you, possess you possibly, then what do we have? So I think that we should more so be careful with learning people, figuring people out, getting that vibe, that energy, meshing with someone before we start having that, interaction, because culture and society is going to be what it is. It's
Mhm.
nothing we can do to change it. I mean, like I said earlier, we can take it off of TV all day, but shit, they still going to find a way to get it done no matter what.
Yeah, that's true. Um, Red lipstick vibes. I should bring you into this conversation, but
Yeah, come on.
yeah. Mm.
The more the merrier.
What I was gonna say is, um, you brought up culture and how it is done in Europe. Um,
Mhm.
we went to school in Germany, and you know, at certain swimming pools in Germany, after a certain time, you had to be naked, or you had to leave, or you couldn't come in. And for
Ooh.
us, that was like, yo,
Yep.
wow. yo, they naked. And I firmly remember seeing a woman with a tampon string hanging out. And I was like, yo, wow. And it's funny how you said in America is different. And it's like,
Mm-hmm.
y'all come from this liberated environment in Europe, come over here and um get all reserved, and now you
Mm-hmm.
create this thing in life to where um that's taboo, that's this,
Right.
that's that.
Right.
And it's
Right.
like, well, wait a minute.
Right.
You come from here where everything is this, now you try to redefine things, and now we're going through this sexual revolution
Mm-hmm.
and this exploration and freedom of this, that, and other. And it's like when you get to a certain age and you look back at how things transform, it's like, this is crazy. And I found myself looking at TV now saying, oh man, there's too much sex on TV. Oh my God, I'm tired of seeing this. I'm tired of seeing that. But I have to catch myself because it's like, it's nothing. I have to remember I went to school in Germany to where it was like, hey, it's just what it is. And
Mm-hmm.
we all get caught up in that trap until we unplug. Um, when we look at society being to blame, I will say that society is the blame for the irresponsibility
Mm-hmm.
these days, more so than anything else. And it kind of bleeds into culture because, hey, the FCC says, hey, we could do this, we could do that. And then culture says, oh, we could do this, we could do that. Now let's just go overboard and flood it, flood it, flood it. Now we have all these situations to where it's like, yo, these kids are off the chain. And it goes back to this thing to where, oh, this is a new thing. Let me do this. Let me do that. And this comes back to parents. Oh, my child is off the hook. Let me. And it's like it's just so convoluted, twisted, and all these other things that it's like we can't get a grasp on it. And like you said, you can't change it. Can't take it away. It's here.
It's here. It's here to stay.
Yep.
Yep.
I mean, the thing about it is, it's kind of like a double edged sword, right?
Mm-hmm.
We know growing up in Germany that the stuff that we saw back then kind of like it pales in comparison um, to what we saw back then. But
Mm-hmm.
now that, our country is kind of caught up with the rest of the world and kind of surpassed it in some instincts, it's kind of like a culture shock to all of us because we're
Mm-hmm.
looking at it like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, so you're putting this stuff on TV,
Mm-hmm.
but you're kind of like putting the cart before the horse
Mm-hmm.
because some of us haven't had that conversation with our kids yet, or some of our younger members of our family. So it's kind of like some parents they want to shelter their kids, I'm sure, from all the adult things that they see on TV. But at the same time, if you're not taking the time to explain what's going on, then you know how are you helping your child?
That's what makes them buck wild.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah. Hiding things from them. That's what makes them buck wild. They want to know. Think about you got the what they call them PKs, preacher kids, nuns. I mean, mo- mo-
Uh-huh.
most of the sex going on in the people who claim to be religious. So I mean,
Yes.
that's where most of it is taking place. So I just kind of don't agree with just putting the lid on human nature. Sex is natural. You
Mm-hmm.
can't just we just have to educate properly about it.
Right.
Yeah, and a lot of people lose concept of what educating properly is when it
Mm-hmm.
comes to sexual acts and irresponsibility or responsibility.
Right.
Um, We're talking about in the black community, but it's in every community. We can probably speak better because we're from the black community, but this is a pandemic, epidemic that's, everywhere. I think I take it more personal because when it comes to society and culture, it seems that our music culture is very, 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 very irresponsible when it comes to this. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and it seems like that's what generates revenue for
Mm-hmm.
them, popularity, cloud, cap, as they say these days.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like they don't care. And because they're doing it and they don't care,
Mm-hmm.
that bleeds into the culture where they're doing it, they don't care. And that adds on to the irresponsibility, which I look at like, yo, do like do y'all even care about this aspect of what's going on in our community? Because you can
Mm-hmm.
talk about Black Lives Matter, this, that, and the other, but this is really hitting us in the spine and breaking us down because we have an increasingly large number of teenage parents or kids raising kids going on,
Right.
and it increases the crippling effect of this irresponsibility because hey, my mom is at club age and I'm almost at club age. My mom is shaking her ass, so I'm gonna shake her ass. My dad is doing this, so I'm gonna do this. And it's like,
Mm-hmm.
at what point do y'all say, and I mean say and really mean, I've been through this, I want to break the cycle because
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't seem like a lot of people out there breaking the cycle.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like the smaller groups, meaning the ones who are more responsible, they're being basically overlooked and overheard. You know what I mean? Like,
Mm-hmm.
because society is at a place where it's like the hell with the rules or the hell with doing what's right, those few who are saying no, this is not right, they're
Mm-hmm.
being pushed out the way.
Mm-hmm.
They're being ran over.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of like, even though they are trying to hold that line is
Mm-hmm.
getting overran.
Ran down, ran down. Yep. And then that causes the pressure. So then they give in to the pressure. It's like, well, what am I gonna do? I can't hold my traditional values. My upbringing was this way, but now I'm out in the world, my girlfriends, my guy friends, you know what I mean? They got this going on, we got social media going on, and they don't want to feel left out,
Hmm.
you know, of everything else, but you're not missing out on anything, and that's what I want people, young women, men too, to understand, that you're not really missing out on anything by using your brain when it comes to sexual responsibility, because you're going to do yourself a disservice if you don't use your brain. You have to think about the situation that you're going into. If you don't want kids, don't go have kids. And another thing, this is what my podcast episode is about tomorrow. But
Hmm.
and it's about women too. You know that children can come out of having sex. We know this. But so many women want to blame the male, but you have a responsibility in that too. So when you lay down with a man or whatever and you get pregnant and you say, oh, he said he loved me and all that, and we all have this thing within us that tells us when something is good or bad for us. Now we ignore it, but we all have this innate thing that tells us when something is good or bad. So we have to start learning to use our own personal discernment when we are engaging in these type of situations and meeting people. We can't let people influence us to do anything and whatever whenever they decide it's okay for it to be done. So I think that culture and society are bullies. I think that culture and
True.
society um is confused. I think that, you know, when it comes to people understanding the totality and the safeness of sex and how to actually distribute sex properly, it wouldn't, because back in the day what our ancestors had with 10, 15, 20 kids at the time,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And even if we go back to other countries, when you over there, when you got your period, you considered a woman.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you ready at that point. So over here we protect our kids up until they 20, 18, 20, 21. You know, and say, well, you know, you shouldn't use your virginity, but I think we should just, long as we, let's say this, long as we educate
Right.
on the outcomes and how to listen to your own voice and not let the world and social media and culture or whatever else influence your decision making in that situation, we would handle sex a lot better,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
believe.
Totally agree. Totally agree. Um, I just threw the link to your Facebook page in the Ownership Podcast.
Thank you.
Make
Appreciate
sure y'all go check our podcast out. And while we're on this conversation, it kind of your last podcast episode. I want you to tell the people a little bit about it, but it kind of plays a little bit of factor into this conversation. So go ahead and tell them about your last episode.
My last episode was about envious mothers, about being raised by a narcissist or a toxic person, that can be male or female. But I spoke specifically to the women because this is a situation that I live. Okay.
Right.
And like I say earlier, it stemmed from my mother. I'm gonna just put it out there. My grandparents had 8 kids, 4 boys, 4 girls. Okay. And they all were molested by my grandfather, who is no longer here, but they all were molested. And my grandmother knew these things were going on, but in that time, what went on in this house stayed in this house. And a lot of people didn't talk about it. So that set up a lot of trauma in my mother. So when she raised her children, you know, it caused a lot of anguish and jealousy and I guess just a toxicity. Like she didn't know how to communicate. She didn't know how to teach without the anger and the turmoil. And it damaged us so badly, you know, that we made awful decisions, you know, as kids growing up. Like I mean, I had my life growing up, let's just say I started early, like a lot of people do. These young girls are doing nowadays. I started early, and that was because I wasn't getting that love and that affection and that soundness at home because my mother
Right.
never received that. So
Mm-hmm.
she didn't know, and I know she did the best that she could from what she knew how. But,
Right.
you know, so I don't totally condemn her for it. But when you're on the receiving end of that, it's painful because it's like, damn, what did I do to you for you to be so upset at me for trying to build a better life, for trying to be a better person? So, Envious Mothers, my podcast episode was pretty much about how mothers, you know, take that trauma or whatever trauma that they have been in out on their daughters. Not necessarily my mother's situation, but any situation, because you have mothers who tell their daughters, you know, they don't need a man. You have mothers who tell their daughters, this is how to get a man and what to do to, I guess, snag him or to manipulate him into doing this, that, and the third. When in actuality, it wasn't the right type of advice they should have been giving to you in the first place. And that
Right.
happens to a lot of us. I can tell you right now, most of the women who are going to listen to this show can relate to what I'm saying. They just won't admit it because we as women get too much of a pass, I believe. I think that too many women feel like they can do what they want, say what they want, act and behave how they want, and they don't, no one can say anything to them about it or correct them about it. But the things that your mother, grandmothers, and aunties tell us as when we're growing up as little girls has played a major part in our upbringing and the decisions that we make with men. And that calls, yes, a major responsibility because my mother, you know, told me. I ain't supposed to do this or give nothing to a man unless he giving me something back. So you done raised me to think that I have to manipulate this man by doing this and that in order to get this and that. And that's not the proper way to teach a child, a little girl for that matter, how to communicate with a male. And there's too many young ladies out here nowadays, and that's the irresponsible part right there. There's too
Mm.
many girls out here nowadays who have been taught by their mammies to finesse a man or to do or behave in this certain type of way around a man. You ain't got to listen, you ain't got to do this because you the female, so you deserve all the fucking praise and respect and support. But that's not necessarily the case. We have been raised in a lot of households that has taught us to pretty much use our bodies,
Mm.
as pawns in order to get what we want out of life. And yes, you're a woman. Men have been attracted to women from the beginning of time. I mean, it's just who we are. It's nature. We have breasts, we have ass, we have abdomens, thighs, legs, whatever. That is it's beautiful. We are a work of art. But the
Right.
irresponsibility comes in again when you have someone telling you one thing, and then when you go out into the world and experience, you are trying to, little girls are forever trying to please their moms, just like little boys are
Mm.
forever trying to please their fathers. So you go out into the world naked and blind and try to get certain things accomplished when you really wasn't taught from a genuine place, or a place that really made sense to help you even get somewhere in life. I don't know if that answered your question, what you're trying to get me to say. So touching. I just kind of went along with it there.
No, no,
No,
I think that was great. Sun Solex, go ahead.
yeah, it definitely makes me want to go back and look at that episode because you were really on point in my opinion, with what you're saying. I mean,
Yeah.
a lot of people, if you really sit back and listen to the words you're saying, you can relate.
Mm-hmm.
Just take your feelings out of it, your emotions out of it, and listen to the actual words.
You
And I
have
think
to.
that's one of the biggest mistakes we as human beings um, we make constantly, day to day basis.
Mm-hmm.
We want to put our emotions and all that comes along with it into what it is that we're actually listening to instead of listening to the words.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I wanted you to tie that in, not only to shout out your podcast, but I when I listened to that episode, it it made a correlation to this topic because that also plays into the irresponsibility when it comes to sex, not only for young women, but for us men who grow up in households with women.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I know women are trying to please their mothers, and if our mothers come from a damaged background or whatever the case may be, you know that sometimes trickles down, and
Mm-hmm.
you're either being taught irresponsibility or not being taught at all. And the other thing about it is, that goes into what you were saying is, using your body for financial gain or whatever the case may be. It's like there's also that component of irresponsibility where
Mm-hmm.
we're using our bodies because that's where we think we're getting love from, affection, and all these other things out there. And it's like people tend to dismiss that reality and
Mm-hmm.
and don't take it seriously, especially when you're saying, oh, you better not have sex, you better not get pregnant, you better not catch a disease. But
Mm-hmm.
you're not you're ignoring or overlooking the fact that you're teaching toxic irresponsibility, and then that causes children, young adults to sneak around and have sex, which is another layer of irresponsibility. And then they get caught up in these situations, and then there's this big, oh my god, my baby, oh my god, my baby. But it's like, no, you need to
Right.
hold yourself accountable because you either gave this child or this young adult improper tools or no
Mm-hmm.
tools at all, and that contributes to the mental and emotional effects of this entire situation.
Absolutely. So imagine my confusion because, being raised in an environment like that, but my father's mom, my grandmother, was the total opposite.
Mm,
Raised me the total opposite way. So I had both in my
right.
life growing up. So I had the love and the proper values, and I had this. But then when
Right.
I went home to this. And
Mm,
so I don't know what to do, but I know this is my mom. So I'm gonna try to do what my mom says. And there were times when my mother, tried to combat things that my grandmother said because it made her feel some type of way. So, parents play a part in it too
yes, they do.
Def- Definitely. Please
Yes,
believe it.
indeed. Yes, indeed. Mm.
I'm
So,
enjoying this, you guys.
yeah, yeah.
Good. Good. So, how does the individual ignorance play in this equation?
Mm.
Oh,
I'll jump on this.
Uh,
The individual ignorance plays a significant part in this at a certain points in a person's life. Um, if you come from a background to where you're taught these things, and you say, for lack of a better term, fuck it, I'm going to do what I want to do anyway, and you know the repercussions,
mm-hmm,
it's like you really ignorant to the facts of whatever may be. If you're out there doing it just because everybody else is doing it, your
mm-hmm,
ignorance is also taking the better of you. And it's like, you know better. It's like, at
mm-hmm,
what point as a child or young adult where you know that you are not mentally, physically, emotionally, or financially ready to take on the repercussions or whatever, and you still do it anyway. It's like, that's your ignorance. Like,
mm-hmm,
if you are in high school and you out there raw dogging or doing this because peer pressure, this, that, and other, and you know better, and you get somebody pregnant, and then you have to deal with all this, that, and the other. It's like, you can't sit there and throw up a red flag and say, I surrender. You
right,
can't sit there and be like, hey, oh man, I need help. I mean, you can do that, but at the end of the day, it's like, you look, you know better, not only because you were taught this, but you see what your peers are going through.
right,
So at what point do you stop blaming the outside world, even though it has a some sort of influence on you, and you look inside and say, you know what? Ah, I got caught up. I knew better. I mean,
mm-hmm,
you really have to take accountability for your actions, and and
mm-hmm,
and we've all had our moments, but some people just like think they got a cheat code and think they can get around their own ignorance. It's like, nah, you can't do that.
uh,
mm-hmm. Yeah,
yeah. The thing about it is, again, when we think about situation with young adults, when you know better, at that point, it's no one else's fault but yours,
Hmm.
mm-hmm,
because your parents had given you the tools, or whoever your guardians are, they giving you the very best tools they can give you.
mm-hmm,
Um, School, whatever education they've influenced you with. So you've been taught from several different angles about what comes with being irresponsible.
mm-hmm.
But you still choose to be irresponsible. There's no one else, at that point that you can blame.
Mm-hmm.
Not
That's
one
true.
person.
Not one at all. Because I mean, like we all said, it's a personal decision. You decided to put yourself in this position. You decided. You know right from wrong. You're a grown person. Hopefully, at this point, you know right from wrong, and you still decide to make a decision anyway that you know that can hurt you. I mean, you have no one else to blame for it but yourself at that point. And I mean, again, that's that self-awareness trait that we have to be aware of when we go out into the world and make decisions. So it comes down to people just pretty much needing professional help at
Mm.
this point, because you know what you're doing, and yet and still some people still go out and do it every day. They did it wrong yesterday, they're gonna do it wrong today, they're gonna do it wrong tomorrow. When you see them 10 years from now, they still doing wrong, because
Uh-huh.
it has just become a part of who they are to just be wrong, and not stop and look at their self and say, okay, if I'm going to go into this sexual situation, is this hurting me? Am I prepared for it? Is it hurting someone else? Is it hurting my family, someone else's family? What am I gaining from this interaction?
Mm.
Why do I want to do this so bad? That's the ignorance of it. Are you asking yourself, why do you want to put yourself in this position so bad?
Mm.
Is it just for fun? And
Mm.
then when you get a baby mama or baby daddy out of it, then it's not fun no more. You
Mm.
get something worse, and it's not fun no more. So now we're pointing fingers. Well, she shouldn't have, and he shouldn't have, and they shouldn't
Oh
have, and they
man.
and it's like, no, 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 no. We're not gonna do that. You knew what was
Right.
going on before you did it, and you decided to do it anyway. So guess what? You go in the bathroom and look at yourself and cuss your own foolish behind out. It ain't got nothing to do with nobody else at this point. You made that decision to be silly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that ignorance runs deep because it's like um dudes out there think they oh, I'm gonna sling this on her and this, that, and the other, and I'm gonna have her on lock. That is one of the biggest ignorant traits that a man can have, and women do the same thing. I'm gonna do this, that, and the other, and I'm gonna have them on lock, trapping each other. It's like,
Uh-huh.
Mhm.
don't you trying to trap somebody else. The only person that you're really trapping is yourself.
It's yourself.
um because you have to think about it. You're stuck with this as a woman, you're stuck with this child. As a man, you're stuck with whatever comes out of it.
Right.
If she is not the person who was mentally or emotionally prepared to bear your child, now you have to deal with whatever she comes at you with. And as women, if that dude wasn't mentally, financially, or emotionally ready to have your child, well, for you to be pregnant by him, then now you got this deadbeat joker or whatever the case may be, who is, doing all kind of stupid stuff. And then the other part of that is going into the ignorance and the irresponsibility is you have these situations to where, all right, I have this situation over here, and this person is getting on my nerves. Watch me go lay down with this joke, or maybe it's their friend, their cousin, or this, that, and other, or just some random dude, or maybe it's 10 times better, maybe it's 3 steps below. Let me go out here and do this. And it's that increase the irresponsibility, because now you're creating more of a ridiculous situation to where it's like, not only is this a vicious cycle, it's like a whole bunch of puzzle pieces that you really cannot put together, and they don't even go to the same puzzle because y'all are all over the place with this ignorance and irresponsibility.
It's out of hand. Everybody is everywhere, going nowhere fast. Everybody's just doing whatever, and with no regard behind it, no type of thought, no type of conscience or anything. They
No.
just out here doing whatever, and it's like, how stupid can you be? I mean, I don't feel sorry for people like that, because again, you knew what you was doing before you did it, and you decided to do it anyway, so you're going to deal with it. Only person suffering at that point, I'm not even going to say it's the person who committed the act that's suffering. It's the children that come out of it that's suffering,
Hmm.
you
Yep.
know because now you didn't went and had sex with this girl, y'all hung out for 2 years. You say y'all was together, but y'all played house for 2 years. You didn't had a baby, but you were still messing around outside. So now you got two more, or got three kids, all the same goddamn age, and then you want to get mad when the man come knocking on your door for child support. It don't
Hmm.
make no sense. Learn how to not be a slave to your loins. I mean, it's just that
Exactly.
simple.
Exactly.
It's just that
Yeah.
simple. If you that hard up for some sex, then you need to go seek some professional help. That if you can't control yourself, because there's too many children out here. And then if this is your mind frame, what health of a mind frame do you have to teach a child anything?
Right. And that line of irresponsibility just continues to go on and on and on.
Yep. And then you're 32 with 5 grandkids. It's crazy.
Yes. Yes. It just don't make no sense at all. Um, so what are your thoughts on where sex should be taught, home versus school?
I would say home. I
Mhm.
would definitely say home. Yep, your home should be your first teacher. Your mom, your dad should be your first teacher of a lot of things in life because that's a responsibility we are given, as people and as parents. And even if you don't have children, it's just the village aspect. You
Mhm.
have to guide people to do the right things and teach them what you know, and what they do with it after that is on them. But I don't think I would leave it up to the schoolhouse to
No,
be responsible for what my child is taught when it comes to something that can potentially make their life better or worse.
Right. Yeah.
yeah, I definitely think it should be taught at home. Um, Again, when you take the time and you explain it to your kids at home and have that conversation, as they say, you can break it down a whole lot more easier than what
Hmm.
I think a teacher could.
Yeah.
Because being a teacher, you have certain restrictions and guidelines that you have to adhere to. But as a parent, we can put all our cards on the table and just let it fly.
Hmm.
One thing I will say is that when I was going to high school, I was fortunate enough to have a principal that looked like me, and he introduced us to this system called. He took us basically to a prison and said, "This is what's going to happen to you if you break the law." And it was kind of like a scared straight program, and it damn
Hmm.
sure as hell worked for me.
Hmm.
So uh,
Hmm.
I'm saying that to say that if there's a program like that or something along that line for young people, saying, this is what happens when you have, you know, kids before your time, meaning it slows you down. The financial burden at that point that you're going to have to, take on.
Hmm.
All the potential you thought you may have had, again, not saying you can't reach it, you know, but it's dang sure as hell gonna slow you down from getting there in a timely manner.
Right.
So I think it goes down to when we're in the school environment, they have to be more creative about how they reach these kids with this subject.
Mhm.
Hmm.
Yeah, I agree. It should be taught at home. But but going back, that safe space and that open line of communication has to be there in order for it to be taught at home.
Right.
Um, as far as school, like I said earlier, when I had health class, it was just bare bones. Um, I,
Right.
I do think that if they built on those concepts of back in the day, talking about the reproductive parts and this, that, and the other, I think yes, that should be taught in school. They could do a little better with it. Um, but when it comes to curriculum like that, I would think that the school, being that these are educators and educated people, meaning they should be professionals in this, they should create curriculum that students can take home and have parental participation in. I think something like that be might lend itself to opening that conversation at home for those parents who struggle with having this conversation with their children, because if 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 you create a situation to where this has to happen,
Hmm.
regardless if the parents are hesitant or not, I think the conversation could be opened up a lot better, and it will create a more comfortable environment, not only for the parents to have this conversation, but also for the children to have this conversation. Bring that back to school, and that could create a better environment for how they're teaching and what they're teaching.
Hmm.
Because hey, this is a science. It's testable. It's information gathering, and
Hmm.
if it's honestly done, we can get away from the craziness that's being taught in school now because
Hmm.
you know I think in Virginia and a couple of other places they're teaching uh, uh, homosexuality, whatever they're teaching, and it's like really like why is that important when there are so many more responsible topics around sex and intimacy that could be taught and should be taught? It's like that part, don't put that in the school. Send that home.
Right.
Let parents have these conversations with their children because when you snatch that from the home off the break,
Hmm.
now you have the ignorance playing in. Now you have
Hmm.
all of this other stuff going on outside the house where a parent may have had a little bit of control. Now they've lost their control. And yeah, and you talked about the village thing.
Hmm.
The village is so broken now that
Yes. Yes.
um
Yes.
it's like how do you, I mean, it would be great to have that village concept, but it's
Mhm.
like the village is so broken that it's like
Oh yeah.
how do you do it?
You can. Not this day and age. You can. I mean,
No.
it's so terrible. Like you just said about how you got teaching homosexuality, but we ain't even got heterosexuality down,
Right.
figured out.
Uh-huh.
So we confused with that. So you gonna go throw this shit on top of it? I mean, now that's why you got so many confused kids in the world. They wear summer clothes in the winter and winter clothes in the summer. They got, I mean, it's it's
Yeah,
it's
so do.
crazy. They don't know whether they up, they down, they depressed because you ask them to do something, and then you gonna go throw homosexuality in the mix and make it even worse. So I mean, it's sexuality at this point in 2022. Wow, I can't believe I'm saying that.
Mm,
Is just, there's no control. There's no way to regain control. I think only from a personal point we can try to make a difference in our homes. But even like I say, with social media now, the computers, school, I mean, it ain't nothing else really you can do about it.
yeah. Mm,
It's just all jacked up.
yeah, it is. It's it's you know, and it's like we could sit back and we can look at the TV or social media and say, "Damn, this is crazy." But then when
Mhm.
you sit down and really had a conversation, you're just like, "Yo, this is sad.
It
It's just
is.
sad." Um, and then when you look at what these entertainers and athletes are doing, um, like like was it last week or 2 weeks ago, the Tristan Thomas or whatever his name is,
Mhm.
um, all that stuff that he was doing and is blasted on social media, not just pointing him out, but that happens so much. And again, these kids think it's cool and they think
Mhm.
it's funny and they think it's the way to go, and nobody's having a conversation with these kids. And it's like, I'm sure he came from a background where these conversations were had, but you throw the spotlight on them, and all of that goes out the window, and they I don't know. I guess they forget or
Mhm.
uh, don't think that they have an influence on the younger generations coming up,
Mhm.
and it's like they repeat the same behavior, and it's like, oh damn, what the hell? And it's like they think they are. Um, relieved of any responsibility
Right.
and accountability. Not that they should be directly accountable for each individual, but they have to think about the greater environment that's watching them, because
Mhm.
they know in this social media age, no one gives a damn about being taught right or wrong. It's like, hey, I want clout, I want attention.
That's all it's about. Like someone once said, you only as hot as your last post or your next post. It's whatever is next. So you're constantly on that, what they call it, hamster wheel, trying to
Right.
race with
Right.
people, trying to do this. And I don't have the patience or time for that foolishness. Like I
Mm.
say, I'm a roll Sheena way, and that's the best I can do. I mean, I'm an educator, and I try to hope that I can redirect people to do the right thing in life and to think about, repercussions and what can happen in life and how to just think about a B side to everything that we do, or even a C or D side,
Mhm.
have other ways to handle situations and be more mature within yourself, and then we can move forward and the world could possibly be a better place, but we are so far from that and have so much work to do.
Yeah.
Right. So let me throw something out to y'all before we move forward.
All right.
What do y'all think about shows like Teenage and Pregnant and stuff like that, and the influence that it has on children? Because I'm under the assumption that these shows are created for children.
I definitely think that they are created for children. Um, they see the glam and the glitter. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm,
That comes with being on this show. And again, they'll tell you that is this is life, but in all actuality, they're writing these kids a script. They're
mhm,
telling these kids what to say. You know, having on makeup and everything that goes along with being put in front of a camera.
mhm,
So again, they're influencing these younger kids or these kids, who are about that same age and making them think, well, that's not so bad. I could do that.
mhm,
When in all actuality, you have no freaking clue
mhm,
what it's gonna take for you to live that type of lifestyle.
mhm.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah. I totally agree. When we talk about 16 and pregnant, or it was this other one on the show where this whole bunch of teenage girls was
Hmm.
in some type of cult thing. It was coming
Yeah,
on
yeah.
MTV too, and they were all just like living all crazy. And it's like, and they're led. That's the thing. We live in a society that is, I guess, religious. Most people follow some sort of religion, but at the same time, these ways were taught by religious leaders.
Hmm.
When you go back down in time in history, so you got these cults and you got these parents who are telling you, well, it's not right, but you are forgiven if you do so and so, and this is the way that you can handle it. And so we're confusing people. You got a 16-year-old on TV talking about how to raise a baby, and she mad at the father and all this and that and the other, but
Right.
she don't even know how, number one, probably fill out an application. She don't know how to probably wipe her own ass correctly. She don't know how to pay rent, how to pay bills, how to be there and comfort another person, because you are a baby yourself. So you are putting this reflection of forcing an American child to be an adult. And I say American because in other countries, they are more advanced. But here, they are behind. So we are following trends or whatever we see on TV. I don't think it's okay for mothers to sit up on the couch in the living room with a 16-year-old pregnant on a TV show doing it for clout and entertainment. It's not funny. It's not cute. It's not any of those things, because this little girl has a couple of more years left till she's considered legal, and
Hmm.
you should be teaching her how to figure out her own way versus trying to learn how to be a mother and raise a child when she's yet a baby herself. So, it's confusing the world so much that, like I said earlier, it's so messed up that I don't know where we can even go from here. I mean, we talk about shit. We got the Boondocks. I mean, oh, these adult animation cartoons. What's that?
Hmm.
Big Mouth is one of them.
Hmm.
That I don't know if you've seen that yet, but it comes on Netflix, and it's these
Hmm.
cartoons that talk about, I guess, the sexual demon of teenagers or young kids or whatever.
Wow.
And it's crazy. Check it out.
Yeah, I'm gonna check
It's
it out.
as an adult, it's funny, but when you stop and think about it, you're
Uh
like,
huh.
damn, these kids. And then, you know, man came out the room one day. It's like, you watching that? I seen all them episodes already. And that's the thing. And I thought to myself, like, okay, so you know all this already.
Hmm.
We talk about these type of things, so you're prepared, so to speak, to go out into the world and make your own
Hmm.
decisions. But when that realism happens, you're really not prepared. You know,
Okay.
so we do have too much in front of them, you
Hmm.
know, and but on the other side of that, what can you do? Because if you hide it, they're going to sneak in and look at it.
Yeah.
If you tell them not to do this and wait till they're ready to experience it, they're kind of going in the situation blind. So I think the safer option would be to just be, like we said earlier, to create that safe space and have them just educated from all aspects of life when it comes to sex and pregnancy and everything else, because it ain't fun. You know, barely adults can make a living on their own nowadays, let alone
Right. Yeah.
somebody
Mhm.
16 years old. So, you know, the TV and all that is just ridiculous. It's crazy.
Yeah. I brought that up because the first time that I saw 16 pregnant, teenage pregnant, whatever the case may be, I was like, who in their right mind thought this was a good idea to put on TV? And it's like someone will try to justify it by saying, we're doing this to teach kids what not to do. But
Hmm.
it's like, um I don't understand why you use a reality show where these children are acting ignorant towards their parents.
Hmm.
They're not wise. They're dropping out of high school, middle school. Um, they don't know the, like you said, they don't even have to wash their ass. Half of them don't even know how to keep they hoo ha clean.
Hmm.
Um, and it's like you're just promoting this thing, and it's like not only are you doing this, but you're seeking out participants for the next seasons, and it's like,
Hmm.
why do you think this is healthy? And then the other crazier thing about that, yes, they're getting paid for it,
Hmm.
and hey, it's hard enough for an adult to manage, but these kids don't know if they can't manage themselves, they can barely raise a child.
Hmm.
I'm pretty sure they can't manage money.
Right.
Um,
Right.
and then you have repeat people on these episodes. So it's like this person was on season one, now they're back season two, and they're pregnant again. And it's like,
Yeah.
why? At what point are you really saying that this is to teach children not to do this? And then you talked about that that group of girls. It's like, I don't know if it's the same show or the same thing, but I think it was in Pennsylvania
Hmm.
where the group of girls all got pregnant at the same time.
Hmm.
Y'all in school. Wait,
Hmm.
at what point do you say, I need to graduate from high school, instead of saying, hey, let's all get pregnant at the same time? He,
Hmm.
ha, ha, ha.
Right.
Um,
Right.
again, you're not
Yeah.
mentally, emotionally, financially capable of doing this. And then you're mad at these teenage boys in
Hmm.
most cases, but in some
Hmm.
cases, you got these grown men getting these girls pregnant,
Hmm.
and now they're mad at the world, and you're broadcasting this on TV, and these naive children are thinking this is the way to go about it, which also lends itself to this irresponsibility. I just don't understand why that was okay, and why whoever came up with the concept for the show gets a round of applause, a pat on the back, a bonus with
Hmm.
this destructive entertainment. I don't get
Hmm.
it.
Mm-mm. Nope. I mean, and it's really, what can we do? I think that show has been on for over 10 years now.
Yeah.
And it's
Wow.
crazy. Yeah, it's been on a while, a good
Hmm.
while. And it's all about entertainment nowadays. All about that quick fix of fascination and funniness, and with TikTok and Snapchats and
Hmm.
Instagram and Facebook. I mean, where does it end? Where does it stop? Now you got Clubhouse going on, and you got, I mean, there's so much going on out here that's really teaching people the wrong way. And like I
Mhm.
say, in
Uh-huh.
2022, there's not much we can do to reverse this.
Right.
It's so bad right now, and it's not any.
Yeah,
It's like,
exactly.
what can you say?
Exactly.
It's
Oh
crazy.
man, yeah, it's crazy. It's just crazy.
Yes, 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 yes.
So, thoughts on sex sales being a prominent in sexual irresponsibilities or
Um,
proponent? Sorry.
well, the thing about it is, it does sell. It always has. It always will. Um, but with along with what we've been talking about all show, it sells so much now because it's a way to make money. You got the
Mhm.
OnlyFans, you got whatever else they do, to make money, and that's just the way it is now. People don't hold traditional old school, values as far as getting out there, getting a realistic job until you can make enough to, or use that job to fund a business of some sort. We just want to use our body. So, excuse me,
Mm.
if I cannot use my body for something good, I can only use it to make money. No one else is going to respect me. No one else is going to respect my body. No one else is going to, just give me that adoration that I need when I go and looking for a partner. So it's like I'm just for sale.
Mhm.
He's for sale, she's for sale. Everything is about that instant gratification again for social media. So when people know that sex sells, that's just what they're going to do. And you don't have, look at today, we don't have good relationships going on, we don't have good values, we don't have safe sex, responsible sex. We just want money. This world is
Uh-huh.
driven by vanity and money. You got to get this bag. I got to get this. I got to get that. I got to, what I'm saying? My girl got wah, 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 wah. I'm going to go on my fucking, have sex with him. I'm going to go blow him off real quick, get this bag, and I'm going to go. And they so out with it. Like,
Mm.
they will just literally say it in front of anybody or
Yeah.
whoever with no regard, no nothing. And I'll be sitting there like, oh, oh, well, even as an adult, I still get that, you know, because I was raised reserved. So even showing a bit of sexuality for me takes a lot, and
Right.
so I don't understand how kids today can just say hey, I'm gonna just go have sex with whoever. I'm gonna be 16 and pregnant, or I'm just gonna sell my coochie on TV. I'm gonna follow all these trends and do all these different challenges on social media and get this money and have an OnlyFans. And then when I don't know, maybe get 25 or 30 and decide I want to slow it down. Now I got 5 kids. No man wants a woman with 5 kids, especially if they ain't his.
Yeah.
He barely want his own goddamn kid. So he don't, you know what I'm saying? He don't
Right.
want no woman with 5 kids. He don't want a woman with a history that he can just look you up on the television or the computer and figure and see all this stuff that you have done in your lifetime, and then your only excuse is YOLO. No, it's not a YOLO. Yeah, you only live once, but at the same time, if you are looking to have something of substance later on in life, you have to think about the earlier choices, that you make. So yeah, sex sells. It always has. Even a little lipstick commercial is sexy. It
Mhm.
sells. That's what it is. But I think, yes, it does drive a lot of us in the wrong direction.
Right. Um, my thoughts on it is we us three are at an age to where we've seen the transition of how much sex sells. Because remember, I think it was back. It wasn't until like the 50s or something around that time where you really didn't see bikinis on TV.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then once that started, it started. We grew up in a time where sex. on TV was limited. Um,
Mhm.
like like when you watch those old TV shows, you barely saw people kissing, and when you saw them kissing, it, we were observant enough. Look at that fake ass kiss.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm. Mhm.
Now we're to the point where, oh wow, they really getting it in. You
Mhm.
barely saw sex on TV. They would go to them sex scenes and then it would cut, and next thing you know, it's the next day.
Yep.
Now, now you seeing a whole sex scene and you getting all the nitty gritty. So it's like, yes, it's selling. It's selling hard, and it's like I don't understand. I get it. Hey, we want to get them dollars in, but it's like, are you really taking the time to sit back and say to yourself, what kind of message this could be sending out? Um, you see bra and panty commercials.
Mhm.
Um, you see, I mean, and it's crazy in America because of how we came up, but in other places around the world, it's nothing. But
Mhm.
I don't think how we transitioned to it is was a responsible way, because now everybody think it's this big sexual revolution. It's like, this is not a revolution. It's like, it's a re-revolution or a reintroduction to human nature, and nobody is able to handle it because of the way that it's being pushed out there. And you were talking about the OnlyFans and it's stuff like that, and it's like, um hey, I can get money for this, I can get money for that. You're not mentally ready for this what you're doing.
Mhm.
And it's also causing the irresponsibility to where are literally putting yourself in a harmful situation. There have been women shot, raped over this OnlyFans stuff. And it's like,
Right.
do we
Mhm.
do we really understand, or do we care? Do we care about the ramifications of this irresponsibility? Because hey, they're thinking about that bag, and that bag gets big,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
you don't know what kind of crazies are out there. They
Right.
they're mentally irresponsible, and because they see you are the new shiny thing that's on OnlyFans and Snapchat and this, that, and the other, and it's like, you're not being responsible. You think, oh, I'm just going to bend over and shake my ass a little bit in these panties and it's cool. And it's like, no, you got to think about the part of your soul that you're degrading, the mental part of you that you're degrading, the emotional part of you that you're degrading. It's like, when you do these things and you lay down at night, are you satisfied and comfortable with what you did? Do you think that helps your responsibility when when you're promoting sex or having sex or whatever? Or are you laying down thinking, damn, why am I doing this? Oh,
Right.
got to get up the next day and do it again. And it's like, when it comes to that time that you want to settle down,
Mhm.
can you transition from what you were doing to
Mhm.
have a successful relationship moving forward?
Right.
One thing I can add to that is I think we've gotten away from that realization of what is the cost of me selling myself?
Right.
Meaning, what's the cost of my soul?
Mhm.
Right.
Because one thing about it is, with this internet, once you put it out there, it's out there forever.
Mhm.
So yeah, you thinking about the bag and what comes along with the bag and what I can buy with the bag, but you're not looking at the long term effect. Meaning,
Mhm.
once you do start having kids or grandkids, and they can pull up what you did as a younger person and be like, dang, this is my grandmother or my grandfather,
Jamal.
basically selling their soul for the bag.
Mhm.
I'm sorry about
You
that.
know, they're just no problem. There are just some things that aren't worth selling to me, and
Right.
my soul is definitely one of those things. It's not for sale. It doesn't have a price.
Mhm.
Right. Yeah, I agree. Um, so, should corporations and or the government do more or be held accountable for what is being promoted?
I think so. I think they can hold back a little bit on some stuff, but again, like we said earlier, I don't think it's really much you can do about what's already been done. Um, like I say, we are humans having we are supernatural beings basically having a human experience.
Mm,
And so, you can't really tell an individual what to do with their bodies. You can't really tell them what to look at and what not to look at. You
mhm.
can't really, you know, stop what's already transpiring. So, regardless of how it's promoted or if it's promoted less, like we said earlier, the cat's already out of the bag,
Right.
and we are in a day and age now where it's that instant gratification. And like I said, we need to learn to let what is be. Even if we took it off of TV, I think it would help the more tender aged kids, but far as like teenagers and adults and so forth, it's really not much you can do about it, because they're going to learn it. I'm sorry, excuse me. Anyway,
No problem.
and this is why a major part of what I do is about looking at your self-worth, your knowing about what it is you want to do in life, because the government actually controls a lot of this stuff. They are the ones pushing this stuff.
Yes.
They know what they're doing before a lot of people realize what's being done. So
Right.
it's television, it's telling you what to do. It's programming. That's why it's called television programming. It's programming you to see the world in the way they want you to see it, because in some shape, form, or fashion, the government and corporations are the ones benefiting from
Mm.
this foolishness, that using their social media sites, giving them airtime on TV, those ratings or whatever the case, having more videos uploaded to Instagram and TikTok. So it's helping them, you
Mhm.
know, more so than it would anyone else. So when we go and talk about taking it off of television, and if they can do more to, they don't give a damn. Hell, they just as bad, and they have more to gain from it. But I do think if we lived in that type of world where the government cared enough about stuff like that and corporations cared enough about stuff like that, it would help out a lot, because it's not fed so much and it's not blaring in our faces so much all the time. And so many people wouldn't, want to do it so much. But here we are.
Yeah. Um, in a perfect scenario, I would say if corporations and government took part, well, corporations, if they took part of their profits and the government was responsible enough to say, hey, if we're going to promote this, this is what should be done. They would I would see them taking their profits and really devoting this into sexual education, responsibility, and stuff like that. Because yes, it y'all they know what they're doing. They know
Hmm.
exactly what they're doing, but it's like you dangle a fish out there on the hook and then you just walk away. And people are left to their own devices or whatever the case may be. But I think if they put more into, all right, let's I know we're doing this, that, and the other, but if we put some portion of this towards responsible this or that, then maybe we could put a dent in this
Hmm.
teenage pregnancy, this irresponsibility that's out there. But then again, who knows if that would work? Um, you were talking about the cartoons and stuff, and it's like, again, they know what they're doing, and
Hmm.
you know, it may look like a cartoon, but it's not for kids.
Hmm.
Um, and through time, we've seen how sexual innuendos are in damn near every cartoon, and it's like if you are not paying attention to the television that what
Hmm.
they're programming, it's like you miss it. Just like
Hmm.
when I first watched Shrek, I missed every sexual innuendo that was in that movie, every one of them, until someone pointed it out and I watched it again and I was like, wow, wow, oh
Hmm.
shit, wow, damn. And
Mm-hmm.
it's like, all right, okay, what can you do?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely think that they could do more, but I think we as consumers, we have to do more too.
Mm-hmm.
Um, my son loves watching Thomas the Train on YouTube.
Hmm.
Loves it. But I'm at a point now where I dang near have to stop letting him watch it because the episodes that he want to watch are not kid friendly.
Mm-hmm.
Thomas the
Like they
Train.
Thomas the Train, they are showing some episodes where you have grown ass men cursing in the
Mm-hmm.
videos.
Mm-hmm.
On
You
Thomas the
have
Train.
segments of Thomas the Train where he's like uh, a horror uh, type
Yes.
cartoon. And I'm
Yes.
like, what in the world?
On Thomas
Mm-hmm.
the Train.
Thomas the Train, I promise you. So again, it was like you're saying, we have to watch what our kids are watching before we let our kids watch it in order to say, yes, this is clear for our child to consume.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
And I just think that we as parents, we're so busy, doing other things that, yes, that takes time. But that's why I feel like, the government and these corporations should be held,
Mm-hmm.
more responsible or held, to a higher standard than what they're allowing to creep through the
Mm-hmm.
cracks, as they say.
Mm.
Absolutely.
Thomas the Train though.
I
Thomas the
know, right?
Train.
I can't. I can't even let that go because it's like I remember Thomas the Train. It was like stop motion animation back in the day when it first came out. So for you to say that, I'm like, wow, Thomas the
Yeah.
Train.
It's so
Yep.
much on YouTube. Like they took all the cartoons and they turn them, like he said, into these horror type things or these, I don't know what it is. Like I've never, like kids don't watch movies as much nowadays. It's a YouTube like
Yeah.
type world. So they take these cartoons and change them up and they be crazy. Like I'm
Yep.
like, what? And the
Mm.
kids repeat stuff, and you like, where did you hear that from? They're
Right.
like, oh,
Yeah.
YouTube. And I'm like, YouTube. Let me see what you. Don't you ever watch that again? Like, wow. That I wouldn't even as an adult watch no mess like that. But
Yeah.
it's too accessible.
Yeah, and going back to the cartoon, just like the cartoons that we used to watch back in the day, they have been flipped and adulterized so much that it's like I can't even watch that. Like
No.
when they came out with Adult Swim, a lot of the cartoons that we used to watch made it to Adult Swim. It's like these cartoons on at night now. It's like why are cartoons on at night? You got
Mm-hmm.
Space Ghost Coast to Coast. I'm like, what is this? And then you watch it, it's like this is not the Space Ghost that I remember growing up. And it's like these corporations are saying, "Hey, sex sells," and it's like the FCC is like, "Okay, that's acceptable now," and it's like uh,
Mm-hmm.
uh, you can. It's so convoluted as far as what cartoons should be, what they are, and who they're targeted to now that you just really can't watch it or allow your kids to watch it. And again, they don't care. They're making money. They're sliding money to the politicians and stuff like this and dapping each other up behind closed doors and sipping on wine and doing whatever. And
Yeah.
sometimes their kids are victims to this nonsense. And it's like, where do you care at for real? Because
Right.
it's
Nowhere.
easy, it's easy for us to say they don't care about our kids. They let us kids see this, that, and the other. But we also have to take into consideration their kids are also consuming this as well. They may not allow them to,
Yeah.
but they can't stop them from
Right.
consuming it. And that goes back to what we were saying earlier. You can't stop it. The train is already off the tracks. The avalanche has already started. So the best you can do is either get out the way or try to find a way to divert it a little bit to slow it down. But to what cost?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Exactly.
It's all messed up, man. I don't even know what else to say about it.
Right. Yeah.
Where do we even begin with this?
Yeah.
You know, it's because we don't control it. We can teach them everything at home, but we don't control everything else, and they got a life, school, TV. I mean, it's all that
Hmm.
they control. What else can you do?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's crazy.
So, are there realistic methods that can curb or assist in limiting sexual irresponsibility?
Well, I would say again, know yourself, knowing yourself, and knowing that this is something you want to do, being sure of that, protecting your mind and your integrity. Parents need to get a little bit more involved and be a little bit more comfortable with having these conversations with their children and young adults. And I think that the most realistic part about it is knowing that when you go out in the world and you go into having sex, that it is a personal choice. No one is making you do it. No one can make you do it, unless it's a serious situation, of course.
Right,
But
right, right.
beyond that, this is a choice you're making. So you have to decide what it is that you want to do with your life. Even if something bad happened to you growing up, you cannot let that define you for the rest of your days. We have so many young people who need people of integrity and grace to look up to in the world, that we have to look at ourselves. Like he said, Sun So earlier, the consumer, we are consuming it. We are the ones buying the porn. We are the ones turning to the movies that have all this sexual content in it. We are the ones buying the download streams to the music or whatever. And then we play it in the car. The kids are hearing it and everything else. They're going to probably hear it anyway. But there's a way to minimize exposing children to so much so soon, and
Hmm.
learn to have healthier dialogue between one another. um and honestly, beyond that, there's really nothing else. Like we said all show, there's really nothing else realistic we can do to stop what's already occurred. We can just try to take better preventative measures, in my opinion.
Hmm. Okay, Sun Solex.
Um, Only thing I can do is just say everything you just said. I double that.
Mhm.
Um, is well said. There's pretty much nothing else I can add to it. I want to say this though. There was a time where I remember when TV programming they had like the R rating, or some type of symbol showing what type of rating they gave that specific program. What happened to that? Because I don't see it anymore.
They do. It's still R, PG 17, 13. It's still that. It only way around that is at the movie theater, I think. They do ask for identification, but shit, the parents even sneak their kids into those type of movies. Like,
Oh,
and
wow.
oh, and I'm glad you brought that up, because even with social media, like when you make a Facebook page or Instagram page or a YouTube account and say, "Oh, are you 13?" Or any child will say, "Oh yeah, I'm 13."
Hmm.
So where's the screening process? It's not ironclad enough, for these young people, and they're too exposed.
Mm.
Too exposed.
Yeah. I definitely agree with what you said. Um, another thing out there could be is um, just know your. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I double what you said. There was a time where I know we can remember where TV went off at midnight,
Hmm.
and that was it. Midnight, the national anthem played, TV was off. Now we have TV 24/7, and whatever else, anything under the sun is on TV. And kids are staying up all night more than before, so they're exposed to this. So to a degree, I think if there were more guidelines to that, then maybe
Hmm.
um, outside of having these conversations, And again, as we talked about that safe space, um, I think that would be conducive to it as well. Outside of that, I think the biggest realistic method, as was said, is taking a look inside of yourself, understanding the repercussions, the ramifications of these things.
Yep.
Um, I have to say, I was irresponsible. Had I been taught better or even paid more attention, I wouldn't have had my first child at the age of 20. Um, I wasn't ready mentally, physically, emotionally, financially. I wasn't ready. Um, had I taken a look into myself, or had I been come from an environment that had a little more tutelage or whatever, or maybe if I had social media and it was easier to get this information or whatever the case may be, then maybe things would have been different, maybe not. But personal, I think the biggest method is personal accountability and understanding that if you're not ready for this, then don't put yourself in that situation, because once you put yourself in that situation, you open yourself up to a lot. And
Yeah.
if you're not with a person who is of a mature mind or is willing to grow with you, you set yourself back. You can't put yourself in these situations where you a knucklehead, this other person's a knucklehead, and you're trying to fight the position that you put yourself in. That's not realistic. So again, you just got to take personal accountability for the decisions that you make and understand what's going on. And also, because all of this information is out there, look at it for what it is. This is not your life. That's somebody else's life. And just look at what they're going through, and don't look at it as, oh damn, that's cool. Look at it as, oh damn, I don't want to get myself caught up in that. And I think if people look at stuff like that and be like, I don't want to get caught up in that, I think that could be a better teacher for these youngsters or even older people who are out there being irresponsible, and say, hey, you know what, that it looks fun, but
Mm-hmm.
that drama right there, I don't want to go through it. And I think if a conscious mind can look at that and be like, you know what, I don't want to go through that. I think that'd be a good teacher and a method that can curb or assist in limiting their responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
Very true.
Yeah. You just stop having sex until you know what you're gonna do.
Right.
That's pretty much the best way to go right there.
You make sure you graduate high school. You on a trajectory to put yourself in a position to where you can say, all right, now I'm ready to do X, Y, and Z.
Yeah,
But if you're gonna be out there and have your own personal sexual revolution, just hey, be smart with it.
that's it.
You
Hmm.
have to
That's
be
it.
smart. You like we are long past the days when you can go just dive into any piece of ass and you good.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. You
you
gotta.
don't. You just don't know. You don't know what you pulling out of that pond or putting into that pond, or you
Ooh-wee.
know how it's going to affect you mentally and emotionally. And if you ain't financially okay, or if you're just financially okay, look here, bro. It's not going to be a good look at
Mm,
all,
not at all.
at
Not
all.
at all. Go, just go shine it yourself. That's what I say.
Yeah. Rub that thing out and just go to sleep.
That's it. Safest way.
Uh, heck yeah.
Oh man.
Don't nobody know about that but you.
Right.
That's
Exactly. Exactly. But
But again, we
but
just want to thank you guys for tuning in, and we want to thank our guest, Miss Sheena LV. Once
yes,
again, this was a pleasure to have you on, and
Thank
I'm
you.
definitely gonna go back and look at that episode.
yes, go check it out.
Oh yeah, yep. And I think I'm gonna put my next episode out be next week, Thursday. But I appreciate you guys having me. This was good fun. This was good conversation, and I know that a lot of people will gain a lot of insight from it. And we'll do this again.
Yes,
For
indeed.
sure. For sure.
Yeah, we still trying to get that that racism thing going. But we gonna get that out there too. But as Sun Solex said, thank you for joining us again. It's great having you on here. We love your insight. And look forward to more of your podcast episodes because yeah, you be hitting them out the park.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah. But Sun Solex, you got anything else for the people?
Nope. Just be safe. Enjoy the rest of your week, you guys.
And be
And
responsible.
young ladies. Yeah.
Wrap it up.
Wrap it up, strap it up, and hey, put some tarp around it.
Uh-huh. There. Every soldier go to battle with their helmet on, so keep your helmet on, son.
That's right. That's
Yes.
right.
Yes. All right. Until next time, King of Our Life podcast, hosted by myself, Soul Touch of the Poet, and my brother,
Son Solex.
and our guest.
Shayna V.
We'll catch you next time.